Laughing Monkey Music Show. Today I'm Rudy Sarzo. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm blessed. Thank you. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. I'm glad we could talk. Obviously, I've been a big fan of you and been following you for years and years and years. And I'm glad we get a chance to talk. Um, and doing the show and talking to a lot of artists and being a huge music nerd my whole life, you've done a bunch of projects that I actually think hasn't got as much light, and certain things haven't been talked about. So hopefully we can talk about a few of them. Um, Obviously, Randy's always a big topic. I love Randy. Randy gets talked about a lot. But some topics don't get talked about a lot with you, and I think we'll go into those. But I think one of the first things I want to talk about is like you being born in Cuba and your influence of Cuban music, how it's played into your style of playing. I mean, because that's kind of like the music you grow up on. I think kind of helps influence who we are. Has that influenced any sound? How you look at music.
Yeah, that's an interesting question because I've been dealing with it all my life, meaning that the music that I grew up with in Cuba has been in my head, even though it's not coming from a speaker or a radio or a band
Right.
performing live. It's I'm programmed. I'm programmed to that and then once I moved to the United States, I in order to fit into what the society and the culture of the United States was 60 years ago,
Yeah.
uh, I had to adapt and I had to reprogram myself. But there's a glitch. There's a glitch going on because I am not fully pre-programmed. Not at
Well,
all. There,
you have a sound though.
I
That's what it is. I think, and that's why I was wondering if
well,
that was part of your sound because you don't sound like every other bass player. I'm not knocking the people, but there's a certain thing like Cuban music is so beautiful and so percussive. It has this great rhythm to it, and you play like in the bands you play in the things you play. Even I've seen just saw you play recently, quite right in Connecticut. Even you play and you whatever you're doing, you always kind of sneak in little things, but you don't overplay, you don't underplay. You play in the pocket, but it's you. You can tell you have a certain sound. To me, I think you have a certain sound, and I think that's
yeah,
where
I mean the pocket depends on who I'm playing with.
right.
It's because a band has a pocket, and even if people don't think that there's a pocket, there's always a pocket.
Hmm.
Whether it's a little pocket or a big pocket. It's like jeans or jackets. Sometimes I wear
Yeah,
jackets because they have big pockets that I can stick stuff when I'm traveling into my jacket.
yeah,
There's always a pocket in the jacket. Rarely can you ever find a jacket without a pocket. Then it's not a jacket anymore. It's a sack.
it's a shirt.
you know,
If you don't have a pocket,
it's
it's
a
a shirt.
shirt. Well, I got shirts with pockets too.
All right, you got me on that one.
The only thing I don't have pocket is in my underwear, but I
Oh,
got
that's
pockets
so necessary.
everywhere else. Yeah. But what I'm saying is, people would say, oh, and this is what it comes down to. To me, the drummer is the de facto conductor of the band.
Yes.
That's what they do. They got the baton. They got two batons going like this,
Yeah.
right? They just happen to be hitting on the way down. They hit something like a cymbal or snare,
Yeah.
and then they got their feet, you know. So they are the conductor, and therein lies the pocket. It's kind of like your metronome. That's
Hmm.
that's the drummer, you know. And I was raised like that, to play rock and roll like that, which came later on in my life. My original programming doesn't have a drummer. It has a percussion section,
Ah,
which is Latin music and traditional Latin music. There's not a guy behind a drum kit. It's a guy playing congas and one guy playing claves, which is actually the conductor. The clave is the what defines the metronome, or the feel, the tempo of the
right.
song. And then you might have somebody playing timbales, and other bongos, other percussion instruments, but it's usually one guy dedicated to a specific percussive instrument. They might switch around. They might play cabasa or whatever other Latin percussion instrument, cowbell, all of that. But it's not one person. It's a section of
Right.
those, musicians, and it comes from a tribal. environment. If the true definition of Afro-Cuban music is, the fusion of classical music, which came from Spain, from Europe, and then you marry it with the African chants and percussion. And if you go back to Africa, where that music came from, is tribal. People in the tribe, they gather in a drum circle, and that's their prayer, their conversation with God, their conversation with each other. So it's very spiritual. And of course, there's spirituality in classical music, because if you go back to Bach, back
Right.
to Bach,
Back to back.
he was the church pianist. I mean, I'm sorry, organist, pianist.
Right.
Okay, church organist, and he had to write a new composition for each mass. That's why there's so much music,
That's
and
bananas.
on the side, and then he had a side hustle. He was playing at a restaurant, like a coffee place, a public place, right? A pub across near where he lived, in what was it, Salzburg, the last residence that he had, and he played. He wasn't just playing in church. He was playing at this place, so you could actually go and grab a double espresso cappuccino and sit there and watch Bach play with his band, which has nothing to do with the music that he was doing in church.
That's crazy to
So
think
I'm
about that.
just giving you, yeah. But up until maybe a couple of hundred years ago, uh, it was all church music. All music was spiritual, especially I'm talking about in the classical
Right.
sense. Classical music. It wasn't until later on that it became secular. So there's always attached to the Afro-Cuban music. There's a lot of spirituality, not necessarily Catholic religion, but I'm talking spirituality.
Right.
You know, uh, and as a matter of fact, in a sub religion, and what I mean sub is because first, what I'm giving you is like, this is knowledge that unless you were born in Cuba or in the Caribbean,
Yeah.
we get so detached from this. This is something that I grew up with, so I understand culturally
Oh,
what the
I'm interested in
foundation of
this. Yeah.
yeah, certain things are. Out of that, also there was a spiritual uh, consciousness that it was called Santeria in Spanish. Of course, in African, it's going to have a whole different name, And this is what happened when the Africans came to the New World, the Caribbean especially. Uh, and what separated it was that in the Caribbean, you had the Spanish, the Catholic uh, landowners. You know, I hate to use the word slave. It's to me, it's the most
It's
despicable
horrible.
word. So I just find ways around it, but it is what it is. And so the Spanish colonials allowed the Africans to actually use their instruments, play percussion,
Yeah.
whereas the Anglo colonials did not. And only a pocket of the United States, Louisiana, which was owned by the French before it got sold during the Louisiana Purchase. It was the French colonial did allow the Africans to use their percussion instruments. That's why we have jazz, New Orleans
Right.
jazz. We have that syncopation. Otherwise, everything would be kind of like polkas.
Thank
American
goodness that
music would
didn't
not.
happen.
Yeah, I mean, American music would not have the syncopation and the rhythm and the beautiful language that it has. And it's not just jazz. I mean, there's a lot of beautiful American music.
Right.
You
Right. I
know,
get that.
uh, if you listen to Copeland, he was the best definition of like when you hear an Aaron Copeland, uh, whether it's dan da 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 da, what is that? The Appalachian
Oh
something.
yeah.
I forgot. I haven't plugged in into Aaron Copeland lately, but or rodeo. That's a rodeo. When you listen to that, you get images of the West, the vast fields, Montana, South
Right.
Dakota, whatever, the Black Mountains, all of that. It's like the music just triggers that. And it's completely different from listening to Louis Armstrong, but still is very American, sounding, as we know American music, which is by now is so many things now,
Yeah, I couldn't
because
even define it.
yeah, the more culturally diverse the America becomes, so does the music, you know. And so, but getting back to specific, the Afro-Cuban being the fusion of classical European and the African music, along with it came spirituality, and it was called Santeria. And what they did is even though they were the Africans were allowed to play their instrument, they were not allowed to practice their own spirituality. They had to be converted, forced to convert to Catholicism.
Right.
So they figured a way out around that, a loophole. So they were given saints. Oh, Catholic religion, they have saints. Oh, these saints remind us of our own saints that we have in our religion, and or mythical figures,
Right.
because the saints are people, humans that walked the earth, and then they were canonized, became saints. I'm talking about mythical, spiritual belief of these, these forces, spiritual forces, energies, and they were given certain name, African name, Shango, Yemaya. Uh, there's like one for each Catholic saint. So what they did is, and it became like a subculture, so sub uh, religion to
Mm.
Catholicism is Santeria, and it's still practiced today heavily. Especially if you go to Miami, you're going to see a lot of little shops that cater to that. And when you
Really?
see a Catholic saint, well, they're actually it's they're selling you the consciousness of the equivalent to the African's spiritual God that
Okay.
represent represented by that saint.
Yeah, I know that. Thank you. I didn't know that. It's
Okay,
kind of
yeah,
that's
yeah,
interesting. It
but
really is.
in reality, Afro-Cuban music becomes the soundtrack to that spiritual consciousness.
Which influence with you is there's something always about just I don't know what it is. There's something very different about your playing. I think from the very beginning, I always thought you had a different flair, and I also think that right at the gate, I think what made you really stand out is when you went from clubs to playing like big arenas. You knew, and I don't know if you learn it or were you just intuitive about it. Your stage presence, you play to the stage you're at. You know the theatrics. I mean, you're a good player, but you also can play with the bass on it head. I just saw you do that with Alex and Jizzy. I mean, that's a great lineup to play at a stage on a large on a large stage. You have to perform differently.
Mhm.
Did you learn that on your own, or did somebody like kind of teach that? You know what I'm saying? Like you play at a club, you don't have to be so theatrical because you're not reaching an audience. But when you're playing in a stadium or like a civic center or something, you need to be larger than life generally.
Yeah, there was when we were younger, uh, as I was developing my musical style, it was always very competitive, always friendly competition. It's like uh, our best friends are the ones who challenge us to be the best that we can be, and
Mm,
they're usually better than we are. So we spend our lives trying to catch up with them, you know, because you don't want to get left behind. And second of all, they're showing you that there's a better way, a higher level, you
right.
know, of achievement, whether it's in sports, whether it's in music, anything in life, And so I knew that I had to up my game. That was the bridge. See, when you're going from clubs to arenas, it's a leap. So you have to perform at the level of an arena player well, you're almost ready to be an arena player. You
Okay.
cannot, yeah, and because it's all okay when you play. Let's say sports. Any minor league player will only make it to the majors if they are performing at a major league level.
Okay.
Then they're ready, you know, and you can use that same apply that to being a band. When I saw Quiet Riot in 1977, the year before I joined the band, I saw that they were making that leap into becoming an arena band as a performer. Uh, the strategy that they had musically, just like every other band in LA, which was to please the record companies by making music that you second guess that this is what the record company wants to hear rather than to be yourself. But everybody was doing that.
Right.
Everybody, record company guys will come and see you perform live, let's say Quiet Riot with Randy Rhoads before I joined the band, and they will go, I like what I see, but I don't hear a single. I don't hear a hit song. And that's how you get signed. If you got those songs that are so obvious, you
Right.
know, to whoever's going to sign you, and they're going to sign you before the competing label signs you. So there's a little war
Mm.
going on. You got to have that. I don't care if you're like performing at a Led Zeppelin level. If you don't have Led Zeppelin songs, or you don't sound like Led Zeppelin, you're not going to
Yeah.
get signed. It's what I'm trying to say here. Uh, and I'm using as many references as possible for whoever happens to be watching this. The So it is you. I had to develop all that I had. As a matter of fact, when I was playing with Quiet Riot, you can see photos of me doing just about everything that I am known for back in playing in clubs with them, with the band. It wasn't like all of a sudden I'm playing with Ozzy. Oh, okay, I'm going to do this and do that. No, I have
Right.
been doing that. It was you know, second notion for me to do that. It was normal. That's the way I play, and it comes for me from having watched a lot of really boring performances when I was a kid. Uh, and I promised myself that if I ever get up on that stage, I'm I'm not going to be that boring individual, because we want to be entertained. If we want
Yeah.
to listen to the music, just stay home
Just
and
to stay home with
put
the
the
record.
record
Yeah.
on. Yeah, yeah. And so it's our responsibility to put on a show. Even the Beatles who were brought up like that. Have you ever read their history when they used to play at the Reeperbahn? Because not only did they play at the Star, but they also club, but they also played at different clubs on that strip.
Right.
Uh, they were always told make show, in Germany, so they knew how to say in English make show, which means perform. Just don't stand there, be exciting, be the reason why people pick to go into this club out of 20 clubs to watch that band perform. It's a performance,
Right.
and so that, and the best way to do that organically and not fake it, not because I watch people, for inspiration and to learn what to do and to learn what not to do. We all
Right.
have so much to teach, whether it is you do be like this or not, do not be like this.
Right.
you know,
Well,
even though they don't
you
realize
had it
that.
though. You were a leader, I think, in it because I mean, back then there were a lot of rock bands that I remember watching. You were just it was like the full package, and then when you guys broke, it was not like Beatlemania, but like and like when you were in quiet did the mental health and it broke. When the video hit, you guys were all firing on all cylinders. You had been doing your performance, your moves, the sounds, everything was
Mm,
there. You know,
mm,
and that's I think part of the package. I mean, at that point, I don't think a lot of other, especially bass players, were always like in the back, almost like behind a curtain. You know, weren't really front and center as much. There's only a handful of musicians that were really aggressive bass players that were playing and entertaining. In the rock world. I think as the '80s went on, it became a thing. But I always think of you one of the guys at the forefront of being an entertaining bass player while you perform too. you know,
Uh,
and I always appreciate
th
that.
thank you. Thank you
Yeah,
so much for saying that. But it happened naturally. I don't think of myself as, I mean, I am a bass player and I love to play bass. There's no, you put me in a room full of 20 different instruments, I always go to the bass. I have no interest. As a matter of fact, people ask me, what was it like to pick up Randy's guitar? I said, I never picked up Randy's guitar. I never picked Steve Vai's guitar. I never played Eddie Van der Berg's guitar. It's not, we, when you're in a band, you respect other people's instruments. You
right.
just don't take it for
Yes.
granted you're gonna grab stuff. Okay, that's number one. Second of all, I love playing bass. I picked up other bass players' basses. Yes, no problem. I'll do that. I'll go, can I check out your bass? I love that. See that how the action on the instrument, how it feels, or maybe wow, I like your instrument. Maybe I want to get one just like it. Things
Yeah.
like that. But guitar is like I love the sound of guitar, of course, but it's not like I want to play guitar. I got guitars at home. I never played them. So,
Really.
so yeah, I got mandolins, I got guitars, electric, acoustic, whatever. I play the bass. But I do not identify myself as a bass player, you know, absolutely a bass player. No,
Okay.
I'm a musician. I'm a musician.
I
I
like
can
that.
find as much inspiration from let's say Jimi Hendrix, Keith Emerson, Keith Moon, non-bass players. They inspired me because it's their consciousness that resonates with me. Not because they happen to play a certain instrument. It's their belief system of what they do as a musician that really resonates with me. Especially the guys who take it beyond the norm, the outside the box guys. I love that. I love
Well,
that because
you
I
were in a
don't
Beatles
think
hat.
that
That was Paul McCartney, right? You were in the Beatles hat. Paul McCartney would do
oh
that.
yeah,
He
yeah,
would
Paul
he would
McCartney.
add something you would
Well,
never think about with bass.
Well, this is the way that I look at Paul McCartney. Of course, the bass guitar in 1962, 61, whenever they actually started making some recognition, because for us in the United States, it was 64 when they showed up on the Ed Sullivan show. But they have been around before that,
Right.
you know. And what's really interesting is that McCartney's first instrument was actually not only the guitar, but the piano. Now, he's left handed, but there's no left handed piano. There's left handed guitars and other
Yeah.
instruments, and the bass, of course. But what he did as a natural left handed player, he brought in this hand, the left hand, that was his main hand, being a lefty, right?
Lefty.
So where's the bass on the piano? Oh, it's on the left hand, whether you're a right-hander or a left-handed person.
Hmm.
So he took a lot of what the melodicism that he was able to do, the bass lines with the left, apply them to the bass, because that was, you let's say if you're lefty or any piano player, you play the bass movement with your left hand and you play
Right.
the chords and melody, you know even you don't go if you're sitting in middle C and you're playing down, you're not going to be playing a whole lot of chords in the bass clef. The chords are coming from like the middle C up. That's your right hand, right?
Yeah.
Even if you're playing melody, but in rock and roll, there's a lot of comping, bum, 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 especially I'm talking rock and roll, 50s rock and roll, which is what the Beatles grew up with,
Right.
you know. So what made McCartney so impressive was that he naturally leaned towards being melodic, playing with his left hand. It's now the left hand is playing the melody. I mean,
Hmm.
the right hand is playing the melody, but the left hand is driving. He was driving like nobody else. Nobody else from the British bands were driving. Jim Jimerson was driving, but then again, he was funky. He played with syncopation, where McCartney went bum 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 da 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 da
Yeah.
right on top of the beat with his left hand, because that's what the left hand on the piano when he played rock and roll, like Little Richard, Jerry Lee Lewis, and all that, that's what he did. He drove it. So he takes his hand. Now his left hand is doing all the melodies right here, driving it again. Da, 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 all the same movement that he had on the piano with the bass, he puts it on the fretboard.
It was special. It was the best. I'm a huge Beatles fan. I mean, I think it was, so it was innovative, especially at the time, whether it was just him being him, it was so groundbreaking. Besides his
Absolutely,
natural talent.
absolutely. I mean, he did listen to a lot of James Emerson. Of course, Will did, but he was able to apply it. There's something about the Beatles that I've read and listened to interviews is that they actually every time that they wrote a song, they were trying to imitate somebody, but they had such a filter that by the time the song came out, it sounded nothing like Motown
Right.
or Memphis, and it was just amazing. Yeah,
Well,
what incredible talent.
I think that's more of a statement than anything. I think what happened was I think after you guys all changed bands, and I think when you guys did Manic Eden, that project, I don't really hear a lot about that. Can we kind of touch on that for a minute? 'Cause I think it was a great band, actually. It's a good album, great bunch of players, kind of during it was 94, so that was kind of like grunge kind of came in, so it didn't really get the full, I think, airplay probably that it should have gotten. Um,
It never got released in the United States.
okay.
Now, as a matter of fact, it's getting a re-release. I don't know how much the availability is going to be of the record, but now people they stream it anyway. So
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to be able to have physical copies of the album, but at least they'll be able to listen to it and stream it.
I've heard it on YouTube. I mean, I think it's great. And then I heard
Mhm.
back in the day, I remember hearing about you guys, but never, it's like, like rumors, musical things, like in musical mags of getting together, but that never coming out. Kind of really a shame because that was a good band. I would like to see you guys kind of keep doing something together. What an interesting thing with Ron's voice and you guys playing and Adrian. It was just such a, such a good sound. And I think it picked up a little bit from the energy of White Snake, but you guys kind of took your own style, I think, with it. You know what I mean? Or didn't copy it, which is kind of interesting to go back and listen to the two now. At this point, with all your playing and touring, is it? And I think it's, by talking, it feels like answer. You're still learning. I feel like you still learn, right? Like, as you feel like you're always learning, like playing and
Uh,
as a
uh,
musician.
well, no, I'm learning by actually taking lessons.
Oh, okay, so
I
yeah,
go to
that was my
YouTube
question.
and
Like this,
I
some people do that a
yeah,
lot and don't always take lessons. Some
yeah,
people just learn. But through our conversation, it kind of feels like I answered my question because it feels like you're so engulfed that you know what I mean.
yeah, yeah. I mean, even if you're self-educated, you have to get the knowledge from somewhere until you have uh, 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 accumulated so much knowledge that then you start experiencing self-realization, which is basically okay, 101 is two. Oh, so 2 plus 2 is 4. Oh, okay. So you start analyzing things and using logic to
Right.
teach yourself, you know. And so music is like that. Sometimes I take a lesson and my biggest issue with my own way of learning things is that I've been doing for so long that a the first couple of minutes of a 10-minute lesson will all of a sudden spark something and I go, okay, I got it from here. And I just go
Oh, really?
on my own, music journey to experiment with what I just learned and get certain things. And then I go back to the lesson. And by then it's like, okay, yeah, I figure it out. But see, lessons are perception because not there's so many lessons available, and I would say 0.0001 will actually follow an academic, you know,
Right.
teaching method. That first you learn this, then you learn that. It's like building blocks. We have accumulated individually so much information that we got most of the blocks are there, but there might be gaps here, pieces, missing pieces of the puzzle
Hmm.
that will complete the picture. And that's what we're looking for, the missing pieces. So different teachers or the people that share information with us, and there's thousands of them. And my algorithm knows where to go and to suggest certain things. And but if I really want a solid foundation to the answer that I'm looking for, I go to somebody like Rick Beato,
Yeah.
because he pretty much follows an academic
Yeah.
pattern sequence of giving you information, except that you can go and you're not bound to that flow. You can go pick up certain things that you need to find out. So I'll do a search, Rick Beato, chromatic enclosures, bebop chromatic enclosures. I'll do that search and I'm going to get specifically him talking about those subjects, because I'm looking for certain specific
Right.
answers to that. But if you really want to follow an academic uh, flow, he's got that too.
He's
You
he's
learn
great.
everything step by step. Yeah, he is great. He is great. And he's got a certain way of teaching it. And I've been following him since before he became, the de facto place to go to, for musical knowledge.
I love when a musician, I don't know if you've had this part too, like where a musician's, at the top of the game, which you are on many levels professionally, but they'll say like, I'll give two bigger names for people to say. Neil Peart says, I want to learn something different. So like he literally had to relearn a different way of playing. Or
Mm,
Dweezil Zappa was playing this way, but to
mm,
go play his dad's music, he took a year off from music to relearn something
mm,
to
mm.
because the fundamentals were different for something. It's always interesting when an artist stops and learns more. And that's why I love to hear like an artist is still learning, like you're still learning, because it's important, I think, for growth. And it shows that you still love music.
Yes, but what I'm more interested is the perception that each individual, no matter what instrument it is, has about the same 12 notes that we're all
Mm-hmm.
playing.
I get
There's
that.
there's so much to learn, about that. I want to hear. I want to see what their approach is, their mindset. And it's not just about the choices that they make or what to play, what not to play. It's also the attitude behind it. That what separated me from from the other rock bases, whether they were Anglo or European,
Mm-hmm.
was the fact that unbeknownst to me, I played like a Cuban rock and roll. I didn't know. I mean, I was aware of it, but I wasn't aware that that's not the way to go. Because
Right.
I've been in bands that they asked me, they brought it up and they say, no, no, this band that we have here, it's more in the tradition, metronomic. Everything has to be on the beat. There's
Okay.
no swing. There's no swing whatsoever. Everything is pum 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 pum. Just follow that. And I said, okay, got it, done. So I become that player. But it's like if somebody says to me, okay, that Cuban accent that you have to get rid of it if you want to be in our circle for
No
whatever
way.
reason. Or let's say I was an actor, and
Well,
this
yeah. Okay.
always fascinates me. I watch actors who are either English or Australian, and they come up with the best Midwestern accent, and I'm thinking,
Yeah.
how do they do that? Well, they have to do it. This because it's for the character. And after all, we musicians in a band, we are characters. You
Right. A
know,
song. Yeah.
yeah. The My favorite singer to go and stay, ever to listen to be in a band with, was Ronnie James Dio, because his lyrics are, in my opinion, cinematic. There's
Yes.
character. There's a big character that he's singing about, and he becomes that character. He becomes the wizard. He will become the man on the silver mountain. He'll be the storyteller of Gates of Babylon. He's taking you on this cinema scope, widescreen in living color experience right on stage. And it's like, now I'm a character in his stories. That's what I was doing on stage. I'm listening to him and I'm going like, yeah, I want a magic carpet. Wow, this is awesome. That's what's going through my head. This movie that he's singing about, we just happened to be the soundtrack, you know, and that to me, it's the ultimate experience of making music, being transported.
Man, Tia was awesome. Ronnie had the best voice live. He could just blast you
Mhm.
out, man. I love seeing him live. Bring it forward now. So I want people to see you on tour. You're quite right now. You guys are fantastic. I just want to wrap this real quickly, but hands down, the lineup, you, John, Jizzy, Alex. I mean, you guys sound so tight. I mean, so fantastic. Um, are you guys going to do any different music? Like, what's any future? Like, any more songs you can do? Like any original stuff or like recordings or anything?
Yeah, we added a new song about a year and a half ago, and in order to do that, we had to get rid of a song from the mental health record because you're only
Well,
allowed to play so much time. And so, we started thinking like, wow, I mean, how many more songs can we really remove from the list? And it's like, okay, well, let's chill on that idea because to release a song and not be able to perform it live, what's the point? You know, and so yeah, so we're hoping to make new music, and maybe we'll start playing longer sets. But then you have to see, so
and I
this
the
is the fact.
economics,
Well, no, it's in a contract. Your contract would say you're playing this long. You can't go over because then
right?
you get fined because it costs money to go over because union,
Yep,
all people are working. It's disrespectful to the other band, disrespectful to the crew if you're staying longer because you just feel like, yeah, I gotta play these songs. So it's not doable really if you want to sustain a
right.
positive career. If you want to make the promoters happy, the audience happy, the crew happy, everybody that's responsible for putting on the show besides you and the audience. So it's these are things that we have to take into consideration because after all, people show up because they want to hear certain songs and you
Yeah,
want to play them all.
I get that, and I think this is more of a fan. It's also I think some of the last couple albums, ever since Kevin left, it really haven't hit me the same. I felt things were missing. This lineup right now, though, makes me as a fan of Quiet Riot. Would love to hear what you guys put together as an album. The energy of you four together in a room. That's probably
Mhm.
just more of a selfish fan thing. Like I'd love to hear the music you guys come up with now at this point. And I get that playing it live or the economics of doing an album and stuff nowadays or the time is not the way it used to be. But man, the chemistry the four you guys have live, watching it, it's pretty exciting as a fan of music. So
Oh yeah, I love going on stage with those guys, and it was so easy for me because when I came back, they were already there, and
yeah,
they have been picked by the previous members, which makes it even more solid, you know, to be part of this vision that they have. So
yeah,
it's a continuation of the band. But Quiet Riot will sound more Quiet Riot doing the classic Quiet Riot
of course,
songs
of course.
than if we start making new music. Because what will happen is, and I'll be the first one because I always tell the guys, be yourself. You got to be yourself,
Right.
you know, because I'm flipping the situation. If I'm not playing with Quiet Riot, I'm playing in somebody else's band. And I've been there longer, more times than I've been in Quiet Riot. So I know the joy of musical freedom that I have in Quiet Riot. And when I join another band, let's say I was playing with Blue Oyster Cult, I'm a fan. I grew up with that
Yeah.
music. But then again, I'm playing somebody else's vision of what the
Right.
music is all about. I had nothing to do with the creation of the music. But here's the word creation. So going back to Quiet Riot, if we play the classic Quiet Riot set list, we will sound more like Quiet Riot than if we create a new set of
Right.
songs with without the original, you know, members of the group. It's going to sound different. It will not sound like classic Quiet Riot because it's not the same people. And I am not going to tell, as a matter of fact, I'll do the opposite. I'll make sure that each individual has the musical freedom to be themselves within the band because they deserve to be themselves. So it will sound really interesting, but not, then people will say, well, this is supposed to be a Quiet Riot record. He says, yeah, but you know, Frankie's it's no longer with us. Kevin's no longer with us. And if you want to go even beyond that, the way that Quiet Riot sounded with Randy was completely different than the Mental Health record.
Right.
So there's a fine example, you know, or even the Mental Health record had nothing to do with the way Randy was playing with Ozzy, even though Randy was the founding member of the group, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like once you start changing components, you start losing the original idea of the group. Case in point, Fleetwood Mac with Lindsey Buckingham and Stevie Nicks, same band name,
Right.
but different from the Peter Green version.
Oh, that's a totally
Very
different band.
different.
Yeah, oh my God.
Yeah, but still called Fleetwood Mac.
I know. I guess two good bands, but
Yeah,
I mean, that's a good point. That's one
yeah,
of the bands that sounds. I don't think I can think of any band that's polar opposite. You know what I mean? That's like Metallica
yeah,
and Enya. It's
exactly,
so different in sound, those two
exactly,
bands.
exactly. But this is but the outcome is the same thing. You're gonna have the original vision of the band, and then 20 years later, you have different members, and you got to let the members be themselves, musical, because why else do you have them in the band,
Right.
when it comes to creating music? So, the difference with Fleetwood Mac is because they had different incarnations of the band.
Right.
So
Like a
they
Deep
have
Purple,
like, yeah, exactly.
Mach
So
1, Mach 2.
it evolved. There was an evolution to it, and then you wind up with Stevie Nicks and Lizzie Buckingham version of the band. Uh, but with Quiet Riot, it was pretty recent, and what happened is, even though Frankie made some records without Kevin, what happened was that the classic set list goes back to mostly Mental Health record
Right.
and and Condition Critical.
Yeah.
None of the, we have one song, The Wild and the Young, from number 3. We got nothing from number 4. And then from the other records, 0. And then we added this new song, I Can't Hold On, that was written by Alex and Kevin. And it was like a lost track
Yep.
that Alex found on his computer. And then we just built a song around that. So that's it. So if people are coming to hear Condition Critical Mental Health, which was recorded 40 years ago,
That's so
and you have
crazy.
brand new music, it's going to be a 40-year gap
Yes,
of
and
progression
fans
in the
are
group.
they
Yeah.
right. They want to hear what they want to hear. They have their favorite lineup, is what it is. And I always
Mm.
say, because I always think, and I'm not saying anything bad about the players that Frankie had sing since Kevin, the personality. I think Jizzy's the guy, and the voice and the personality that makes it more of a contiguous, consistent sound that falls in that legacy
Mm.
of the
Mm.
band. The other singers, different range, different style. If you go to their solo stuff, nothing like Quite Right. Jizzy's a rocker at heart. and he's got the vocals to dial out now. He hasn't gotten weaker. I think he's getting stronger as a singer. So to me, you've been in Quiet Riot. Alex has been in Quiet Riot. So it feels like to me like it's more of an organic sound. Like Quiet Riot's almost like rock and roll high school at some point because you guys have been members and you have somebody who's got a strong enough personality and voice that I feel like it would be more of a similar tie-in for an album. You can't ever replicate. Kevin's different. You can't copy anybody. You don't want to copy people. It's not fair to anybody. But that's why I think it'd be interesting because you finally have a personality and a voice that would be able to carry on the strength that you guys, you being in the band, and then Alex being in the band. Alex been in the band forever now too. So as
Yeah,
far as members of the sound together, so it'd be two
yeah,
different, almost two different like layover eras with a powerful singer would be very interesting. That's all.
yeah. But I'm
I get your
also
point.
as a reference, I know what Alex, Jizzy sounds like singing Kevin DuBrow songs, and I know
Yeah,
what
yeah.
Jizzy sounds like singing Jizzy songs.
Jeez, yes,
He's more Jizzy when he sings his music than when he sings Kevin DuBrow.
right.
You know, and yes, if the audience, then again, we're going back to Fleetwood Mac. If it wasn't for radio airplay, back in the day, we used to listen to the radio, and airplay is what drove us to watch them perform live. Nowadays, what drives the audience to a live performance is the familiar songs that they grew up with,
Right.
because nobody's getting airplay, especially in our genre of music. Like we used to. I'm not talking about these stations that, thank
No,
God,
I know what
they
you're saying.
exist, but it's nothing in comparison to the way it used to be. You know, so it's way different. Also, comparing Fleetwood Mac, who got tons of airplay, to the bands of our genre who have no really, unless you listen to classic radio,
Rock,
and
right.
they will play our music. Come on, Feel the Doors is one of the most played songs, on in that format. But try to stick a new song by the new version of the band, and it's not gonna get the same amount of spins.
Right. Well, yeah, it's a different time, I think, but I think rock is doing so good now. Like this generation of rock bands, like playing the civic centers and the arenas now. You guys are playing it now. You guys are all those artists are getting their what I feel like they deserve. There's a rough time in clubs for a while. The bands weren't getting the audiences now. It feels like the audiences are finally getting to see you guys in a bigger venue. Whether it's a triple bill or something. Like I just saw you guys at Mohegan Sun, like in a great arena. That's where you guys sound good. You know what I mean?
Well,
What a
that's what
great
we
thing.
are.
Right. But that's
I'm
what it
not.
sounds like. How great is that, though?
I spend, and I will play a club if I have to, in order to get me from point A to point A, point B,
Right.
club in the middle, right? Okay, no problem. But when I was playing clubs, I did not consider myself a club musician, because
Right.
there's a certain lifestyle and a flow and a certain consciousness and a certain focus on what you want to do with your life as a musician for the definition of a club musician, or even a side musician, or even a
Mhm.
studio musician that just reads whatever's put in front of them. They'll play it, no mistakes. They keep the budget because they don't have to spend more time in the studio recording this guy, and they go home and they'll do it again the next day. That's what you want to do. God bless you. But that's not what I wanted to do. That's not for me. I like to be creative. I like to be challenged. I like to be spontaneous. Uh, Talking about, I am a different bass player than I was 40 years ago. I think we all are human beings, and if
I hope so.
yeah, I hope so. Yeah. So I do not approach the songs that I played and recorded 40 years ago the same way that I did 40 years ago. I got new things to say with that song. They have been from 40 years of gathering experience and being educated. I have better knowledge of music and choices. It's all come down to perceptions. I've been in so many bands that I have so many different perceptions of playing rock and roll, from playing with the Guess Who, more of a traditional 60s style, to playing with Blue Oyster Cult, 70s style of playing, going for hit singles, on the radio. And then you got the 80s, and then you got the 90s, like you're talking about Manny Keaton, where we're trying to be a little bit less 80 with Manny Keaton, more
Yeah.
contemporary, things like that. And then here come the 2000s, and it's all the way I look at it, the 2000s, as far as rock music goes, there was no seminal band that came out of that
Right.
2000. I mean, to me, the last real seminal band was Foo Fighters.
And that
How
was an
many
evolution,
bands?
I think,
Okay,
too. You know what I mean? I think they came out.
it is interesting to say that. Very interesting. But then again, if I really look at the catalog, if I look at
I agree.
Nirvana, Nirvana is, to me, the only thing that it has to do with Foo Fighter is that Grohl played drums.
Hmm.
That's it. This Foo Fighters to me is completely different consciousness musically, you know. And but that whole period, okay, and then you have the 2000s, and I think it had a lot to do with Napster that became, the Pandora's box to streaming
Streaming,
and everything that,
downloading.
yeah, yeah, all of that. And so what happens is we lost the record industry. Gone, gone, unless you're an act that has been developed for such a long time and proven, and is actually doing stadiums,
Who was doing that
not
back then?
based
That was
on.
it Metallica and Van Halen, I think, at the time, were the only bands I could think of that were that huge. Still being able to do rock in the 2000s, I think, right? The end of the Sammy
Well,
Hagar
no, no,
era.
no, but I'm talking about bands that came out in 2000,
Oh, 2000.
bands
Okay,
that
yeah. Oh, yeah. I can't
from
think of any.
2000 on. Yeah, from 2000 on. So, you know, yeah, but we're talking about bands like Metallica. Metallica's been around for a long time, you know.
They survived
I
the
think
dips in turns. They
yeah,
survived Napster.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
They
Uh,
survived each other.
and then yeah, and yeah, it's an effort. You have to work at it. And but what I'm saying is that right now is, we don't have the machine, the record company, the
Right.
record industry machine, for better or for worse, because we got ripped off by the record industry, but we're getting ripped off by Spotify. You're always going to get ripped off by somebody, unfortunately. It's business, and you're being creative, and you're handing off this creation, and there's going to be somebody out there who's going to take advantage of it, you know and that's the way it is. I mean, and this is not new. This has been going on for a long time.
Right.
you know
No, it's
you know yeah, before rock and roll existed. It's But anyway, so getting back to the state of music in general. The reason why it leans so much on classic rock is because more people are going to tune in to a classic rock station to listen to music that actually was produced, not self-produced, but produced by
right.
generations of handed down information from great producers. There's always a degree. People they learn from the masters, and they become masters themselves, and they produce these bands. And then you got people like artist relations, like the last great one that I worked with, John Colatner. I worked with him at records and so on. These are people who are, that's it's not even you can go to school to learn that. It's a knack that they have. It's an intuition as to
Yeah.
what is a great song. They either hate it or they love it. and they can't even play an instrument, but they can play the radio. That is the big. They got the ears.
Yeah.
Sometimes musicians get too deep into the creative process, and they believe that what they're creating is the greatest in the world. And it just takes one individual to walk in the room and says, "I don't hear it. This is
Right.
not gonna get played on the radio."
They're like, Rick Rubin,
You
I can
guys are
hear
gonna,
I have the ears of the world, Like Rick
yeah,
Rubin will be
and
like, I
he's
know what everybody wants to hear.
yeah, and he's one of those very, very rare combinations of consciousness
Hmm.
and ears. He's got
Yeah.
a definite uh top level, consciousness, very spiritual. He
Yeah.
finds that spirituality in the music.
Very interesting
So
guy.
that's what resonates with everybody. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I
Thank
I
you. Okay.
thank you. Bye bye.